This is a Z89 exclusive interview.
Welcome back to a brief intermission. It is officially Saturday at 4, which means we are back so you can take a brief intermission from your day and get front row delivery of all of the backstage theater news right here in Central New York. My name is Bella, and I have my fabulous hosts,
Ben
and Grace.
And we are joined by the producer of The Precursors, which is a play that will be taking place at LeMoyne next Saturday. We are joined by the beautiful, perfect Chloe Budziszewski. Chloe, thank you so much for joining us here at your party station.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited to get right into everything about you, your theater background, and The Precursors, which will be taking place next week. So first, let's just chat a little bit about your theater background. How did you get into theater, and how did you fall into this?
I've been in shows and doing shows since probably about the third grade. My school makes everyone do the shows, and I instantly just fell in love with it. If there was a solo, if there was a line to be had, I wanted it. And that just never went away. All throughout middle school, all throughout high school, I wanted to be in the room where the theater was. I didn't really care what I was doing.
I thought you were going to say in the room where it happened.
I know, I thought so too. The little reference there.
Just a little tease. And once I got to LeMoyne, I wasn't going to be a theater major. I was a psych major. That's what I graduated with. But throughout that process and taking some classes because, hey, I have the extra time and I like these classes and all of my friends are in these classes. And I started just taking more and more, and I fell in love with costume designing and directing, which is something I never really thought I would get into, but I love it more than anything in this world.
Awesome.
That's so amazing. We just want to know a little bit about how you got involved with the production and maybe like a little bit what the show's about, if you wanted to tell us about it.
Yeah. The Precursors is originally a Spanish piece. It was written by a man named Luis Sorolla, and then it was translated by a man named Don Bojan, and they sent it to the Spanish embassy, and the Spanish embassy has actually worked with LeMoyne now on 3 separate pieces. We did a show called Patenting Destiny a couple of years ago. And then the year after, I started directing a little bit at the college, some like club stuff. And the head of theater department came to me and was like, hey, we have this opportunity. We think you'd be good for it. Do you want to try doing a staged reading of this show called Yerma? And I said, cool, that sounds fun. And I fell in love with it. It was such a beautiful piece. So when they came to me again towards the end of last school year, and said, hey, we have another show. Maybe you want to direct that? And I said, yes, I absolutely do. I would love more than anything to take another crack at it. And actually, when they originally gave it to me, they said, hey, we want you to do a staged reading. Here's the show. Tell us what you think. And I read through the show, and I love this show more than anything in this world. And I said to them, hey, I don't think this should be a staged reading. I think that we should tell this story. I think we should get it on its feet and actually tell this story like it should be told. There's so much in the script and the stage directions that I think we won't necessarily get like we should in the staged reading. And they said, okay. And now here we are about a week out.
That's awesome.
That's so awesome. You just kind of roll with the punches like that. Do you... Because I've never heard of the Precursors before, and I'm sure a lot of people haven't. So what kind of challenges do you face when you're attacking kind of a new work or work that's not really in the public eye from a director standpoint and making those decisions for yourself based on the script?
So one of my favorite things to do when I'm working on shows is obviously look for inspiration, find other shows I love. If I can find other versions of the show I'm working on and just seeing what they do. It's something I started doing as an actor, just to see what choices do they make. And then I found it really helps a lot with directing and stuff. A show like this, I can't find anything about it really online. You could find things about the show's like Spanish run, but you can't find any videos. And honestly, if I found a video, it'd be in Spanish, so I wouldn't understand it necessarily. Yeah. But yeah, it's been really fun actually thinking through everything on my own, not really having those ideas to kind of go off of, just everything that my mind can kind of see. It's been really fun really being on my own for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I did shows, like some directors would say, well, don't listen to the MTI recordings, don't watch other versions of it, and I always ended up doing it. But do you think there's kind of a beauty in being the first one to stage this, and kind of this is all like a fruition of your own imagination?
I am very proud of the fact that I get to say that I am the first one to do the English premiere of this show. I take a lot of pride in that. Yeah, it's an incredible feeling to know that this is kind of the first one. There's going to be a video of this one in the LeMoyne archives somewhere.
Awesome.
So for as long as the future holds, that will exist somewhere in this world, and people will be able to see this story, this specific version of this story that we were managed to put together.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Round
Yeah,
of applause
that's-
for that one, right?
Studio, that's awesome.
amazing.
And I got to see a little sneak peek of the rehearsals earlier this week, which was absolutely phenomenal. So if you could just tell everyone a little bit about what the Precursors actually is about, more of the plot of the show, just to get an idea, because like you said, this is the first time that it's going to be done in English, which is, first of all, such a incredible feat in and of itself, but it's such an interesting name, the Precursors. It like makes you start thinking like, what could this show possibly be about? So if you could explain that for us, we would love to hear it.
So the general kind of idea of this show is a group of 3 kids are basically prepped their entire life by their parents for the day the world ends. And when that day finally comes, those 3 kids are taken by their parents and sent off to the middle of this woods. This elaborate campsite has been built for them. And then their parents leave them, and it's just the 3 kids in those woods with the one mission their parents left. You have to tell all the stories, and that's what they do. They live their lives in the woods, and they wait for the stories. And over time, they grow up and things change, and they start to question, why are they there? Who are they telling these stories for? And we kind of start to see what happens when they start to question between what's real and what's fiction, and what the stories they're telling are really for versus why they're telling them in the first place.
Yeah, it's a really intimate production. There's only 3 official like members of the cast. I know then there's the 3 younger versions of the main characters. But also, can you talk about how they play after getting to speak with some of the cast? They're playing like versions of themselves, right?
I love this script so much, honestly. The stage directions and everything that the audience doesn't get to see is one of the most beautifully well-written pieces of stage direction I've ever seen. The author put so much thought into every single detail. And one of the most interesting things that it talked about was the characters' names. In the original production of the show, the actors' names who played the characters were Sarah, Gabby, and Rodri. So in the script, every single character is Sarah, Gabby, and Rodri. It's the 3 of them. And the stage directions say that the actors playing the characters should use their own names. So my actors' names are Emily, Anna, and Thorn. So those are our 3 characters. And then a fun thing we actually did, this was all Thorn's idea. Towards the end of the show, we tell another story about someone, and like in Thorn's life, and we substituted the name in the script for that actual person in his life. So that's kind of a really cool thing. We're excited for his family to see it so they can kind of be like, oh, we're here too.
Yeah. When you made those decisions with those actors, did you see a switch or a change in how they approach those characters or those roles now that they had more of a personal kind of piece or stake of that or intimate relationship with the character itself?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Obviously, you're an actor, you start a show, you get a character. But through like the rehearsal process, just kind of talking to them and working with them, we really have kind of built into the fact that these are you. Yes, you have your lines and you have the words you need to say for the story, but these are your words. Like, if something doesn't feel right, we've been very open to let's rearrange this line a little bit. How would you say this? Just to really help with that. There are a lot of moments in the show where the 3 characters try to bring some lightness to the situation they're in. They sing songs, they play games. And in those moments, we've really spent so much time just playing with the 3 of them, not the characters playing, but the 3 of them sitting there and having a good time in that moment.
That's really beautiful. Now that we know a little bit more about the show, I would love for you to kind of tell us why you think people should be coming to see the show.
I think that people should come and see the Precursors because it is such an important story. It's the story of possibilities. If you're unwilling to imagine something, think of something, then it can't exist. only when you kind of start thinking and imagining can you create a world in which those possibilities can actually be a reality. They spend so much time wondering, why are we doing this? Who are we doing this for? And at the end of the day, I think that's a good thing for everyone to hear, because it just applies to life in general. Why do we do the things we do? Who do we do them for? And what do you get when you can finally claim that answer for yourself?
Yeah, that's so beautiful and makes you really think. I know that was something when I talked to the cast, they were saying to me specifically, like, this is really just such a amazing piece of theater, amazing piece of art that really just allows you to, yes, see what's happening right in front of you in the specific stories that they are telling, but then also find a way to turn that inward and see how they can relate to your own life and question your own reality, which I think is really, really beautiful. But something else that really makes this so special is it's happening right here in Central New York, right at LeMoyne. Why do you think it's important that this production is taking place here and more on a smaller, more local theater level, and being able to start here in Central New York? Why do you think that's so special for this show specifically?
I think that Syracuse has an amazing theater scene. Everyone is so open and willing to play around and explore everything that theater can be. And I think this show is a great example of that. It's not a traditional piece. There's a lot of stillness in it. Very, very planned and precise stillness, but stillness nonetheless. And I think it's just a different show that people should come and see.
I guess that's a nice kind of segue into, we talk about like where you're performing this, the place you're performing this and its relevance. But what about like the time you're performing this show in? You talk about imagination, creativity, these things that all audiences should be embracing and taking away. What about the show keeps it kind of living, breathing in the time that we're in right now?
It's just about endless possibilities. There really is no world in which they don't know what's going on. They tell these stories and it's just so inherent to them. It's very natural. They don't know why, but you keep moving forward. And I think that's a good lesson for everyone. Times are hard and you have to do things you don't necessarily want to, but you do them anyway until you have to start thinking about, why am I actually doing this? Who am I doing this for? I just think it's about figuring out all of those questions.
Yeah, do you think it's really about kind of finding like your why? Is that more what the show is, or in your own words, kind of like what's the main goal of the show that you want audiences to take away with that?
I think finding your why is nice. Just embracing the possibilities. I was emailing with Luis Sorolla actually, and he said a wonderful, wonderful quote about how imagination is simply the possibility of things. If you don't imagine, it can't be possible. And I think that's something that people forget sometimes. We can make our own change, and people are scared to do that because change is scary. But only when you kind of embrace that fear and take that first step forward can you actually change something for yourself.
Yeah, so beautifully put. And on a more lighter note, I would love to know what your favorite part of the show is. There's so many great moments, so many intricate little stories, because again, you say it's a plethora of stories. It's not just like one that they're telling. So do you have a favorite story that they do tell, or a favorite moment? I know you mentioned a little bit before we hopped on air that you loved that beginning monologue, but
the beginning monologue is honestly my favorite piece of theater I have ever read, seen, had the opportunity to be in the same room as. It is pages upon pages of just blocks of text that three people say all together. I had the honor of casting 3 LeMoyne students to portray younger versions of my adult actors, so you really get to see that passage of time. But that opening section with the 3 students, it's just the story of how the 3 of them got there, their individual stories of how they ended up there in those woods telling those stories. And it's so gorgeous, and they talk all together. It's like the way that we were working in rehearsals is we've been doing it as monologues. Yes, the 3 of you are speaking together, but it should feel like one person at a time. And then eventually it turns into absolute chaos, and that synchronicity breaks up, and they start telling their individual story, and all 3 of them at once are running around the room and saying all of these awful things in such a beautiful way. And then they find that synchronicity again. And it's like you feel that in your chest sitting there watching it. I love it more than anything in this world.
It reminds me kind of like one big like improv exercise. I know like growing up in theater and stuff, you always do stuff like that where you're playing with the synchronous and then you're going back and forth between things. What kind of ways or exercises did you get your actors acquainted to that kind of style of directing within the show?
A lot of times just getting up on our feet, running it. Great, let's sit down now. Let's just say it all together once, and then we'll get up and work it again. I actually met with my students last night, and one thing I tried was having them all stand back to back and then walk to different corners of the room and deliver their monologues like that. So they went through the entire 10-minute opening of the show in complete opposite sections of the room, just really focusing on listening to each other while delivering their own performance. And then when we came back together and actually ran it again after we kind of separated, it was incredible. Something really, really clicked in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For moments like those, is that where you kind of get that itch for directing? When you're like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do kind of thing?
I mentioned earlier, but I never thought this would be something I wanted to do. I started directing at LeMoyne on a whim, if I'm completely honest. They were doing a small fringe festival, and I said, sure, I'll do a 10-minute play. And then I was like, wait, I liked doing that 10-minute play. So in the fall, I was able to actually direct a full-length musical for one of our clubs. And sitting there that closing night and watching my cast have that moment on stage, closing and saying goodbye to those characters, I've never felt anything like that before. And I feel like I'm just chasing that feeling at all times in the best way possible.
What do you the difference between going from a musical to then going to a play? They're so different, and the drama I feel like in a play is just so intense, especially in a show like this. Was there any differences between the two that kind of got you thinking a little bit if you liked directing musicals over plays?
Honestly, I don't think I really have a preference. I see a show and I fall in love with it. It's like a picture in my head almost, because for the 10-minute Playfest, I've done a couple at this point, and every time I sit there and I look through the shows online and stuff, see what I could find, flip through playbooks, and eventually I find one, and I'm not just reading it, it's I could see it in my head and I know what it needs to look like. And that's really all I look for in a show, not necessarily a certain musical or play or feature, just can I see it?
Is it harder to say goodbye to a show like this one that you put so much of yourself into and put a piece of yourself into, your own directing style, because it hasn't been done before in a way that's visible to a lot of audiences? What's it like saying goodbye to a musical that we've seen done over and over versus a show like this that's a little more intimate and close to home?
I am a big crybaby, and I sob every time a show ever closes. That when I closed that first musical, I went back the next day before our strike and sobbed alone for 30 minutes in the room.
We've been there. We've all been there. We've all been there.
But I've put a lot into this show behind the scenes, working with my actors. I've really fallen in love with this story, and it's going to absolutely break my heart having to put it down once it's done. But I absolutely have plans for it in the future. This is not the last you will see of the Precursors.
Are we going to sneak peek of those plans?
I was just going to ask.
I don't know yet. Right now it's a secret, but there are plans. We're hoping that the show can go further. We can really kind of get it moving.
Awesome.
Exciting.
That's so amazing. Grace, is there I know your gears are turning over there.
I have a question. So obviously you've worked with plays, musicals, bigger casts, smaller casts. Have you had a different relationship with your cast members for this show, especially because it is the first of its kind?
Yeah, I absolutely. Before this, I had only ever directed at LeMoyne. I had only worked with student actors. So Emily, Anna, and Thorne are my first time actually having professional actors, which has been super exciting. I know all three of them outside of this. I went to school with Anna and Thorne. Thorne was actually my very first director at LeMoyne.
Very cool.
When I was a freshman. And Emily, I have done shows with in the past, but yeah, no, it was definitely different having that level of professionalism, having that different kind of background, because at school, we're all students at the end of the day. Cool, I'm your director in that moment, but at the end of the night, I lived with three of them.
Yeah, and that's kind of have you seen a difference in comfortability between your actors, especially having the more professional actors with the student actors?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost the confidence is there. Student actors are great. I love my student actors, but they're nervous sometimes. Those professional actors don't have that fear necessarily. And it's nice to like really have them play along. I'm a big fan of an open rehearsal process. I want to hear my actors' ideas. I want them to be involved in the process. It's their show too. They should feel happy. They should feel comfortable doing everything on that stage. And my adults have been so much more willing than anyone I've ever worked with to be like, oh, I had this great idea for this scene. I had this great idea for this scene. I love it when the students do it, but they seem a little bit more hesitant to actually do it. My adults are all over it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You mentioned, sorry, we're talking over each other.
It's okay.
You mentioned one of those relationships in there. You were the directed, now you're the director. So kind of like this like student to now the teacher situation here. How does that relationship work now? Do you guys bounce ideas back and forth with this former director? How does it kind of feel to step up to the plate and now you're directing the director that you once had?
It's been really cool. I've never worked with Thorne as an actor before, so it's been nice seeing him act like he's been doing. No, it's been really, really fun. We've had some good talks, like, especially now that it's been 4 years since he was my director. He's given me some, like, behind the scenes from that show. It's been nice to hear, like, what his process looks like a little bit more. Now, having been through that process and kind of having my own process and just kind of figuring out, I liked when you did this. I've kind of implemented that into my own thing now. So it's just kind of building on what can he teach me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
As we're rounding out this interview, my question to you also, something that I saw when looking at the information online, is also that it's free admission for all guests, all audience members that want to go see it. It's tickets on a first come, first serve basis. Was there any particular reason why you guys decided to do that? I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think more people need to go and see theater, not just theater as a whole, but specifically local theater, and how much love and dedication that is poured into it on a smaller scale. But was there any specific reasoning for making it free admission, and how you think that'll help more people get this show to be more visible to the public?
I wasn't personally behind that decision, but I 1000% agree that it should be free. It's a fantastic show. The Spanish Embassy wants people to see this show. There's a reason they're asking us to put it on. So yeah, I think it being free really just allows that even more. There's no reason that monetary reasons should stop someone from being able to see this theater, see theater in general. So yeah, no, I think it's really great that it's free, but I was not a part of that decision.
Well, is there anything else before we wrap up here today that you would like to say to anyone listening about going to see the show and all of the productions and things that you're a part of?
Yeah. I love this show more than anything in this world. As soon as I got it, I fell in love with it, and I hope that everyone who sees it can fall in love with it just as much as I did.
Awesome. Chloe Budziszewski, thank you so much for joining us.